Start on silent.
This lady here had a issue. You might even recognize this Crown Victoria, the one that we have here now. And this was back whenever it was being driven by a lot of different drivers. And she heard odd noises from under the hood, even with the key switched off. So,
What's a bit of rat?
so whether, you know, where the weak links in the chain are, if you've worked around vehicles very long, you know that there's some of them that have repeated failures. That's one of the things that works about Identifix. Like whenever you're looking up and you're trying to find what a problem is, that if you say if it occurs a lot, you can look at Identifix or ATN or one of those, and you can find out that this is what happens on these cars a lot. You kind of can go there and look first, and a lot of times you'll know. Now, if you get too used to that, you'll find yourself not able to fix anything whenever you run out of ideas. You know, you'll run out of ideas real quick. I worked with one guy that had a really, really good memory, and he could remember every repair he had done, but when his little bag of tricks came up empty, he had trouble figuring out what to do. You know, so you don't want to be one of those kind of people. The Renaissance man is the guy that can figure it out. He can also remember what he did before. But anyway, the weak links in the chain that engineers didn't foresee when they built the stuff. Now, we've seen a lot of newly designed power plants. There always seems to be weak links early on. Like whenever a brand new engine platform comes out, there's always something they didn't find in research and development that happens in the field, because the field is different from the lab, right? It was a long time before we saw 4.6 come in through the shop within need of significant repairs, because it was a really good engine from the very start. And a lot of them got 200,000 or 300,000 miles on their clocks, worth more than a few trips around the planet, you know. And there was some weak links in the engine control. The DPFE sensors would fail. You know, they're supposed to, they're supposed to be reading. The old metal ones would read 0.6 of a volt. They'd come in reading nothing or too high, and then the plastic ones, they were reading 1 volt, and they would burn up. And the EGR valves, even now, a lot of times when you got that unit like you just pulled off at 500 out there, they like to fail too. We've had to replace a lot of those. They weren't hard to clean. The EGR passages like to clog up because of PCV steam and all, and sludge. And we used to have to clean those to get rid of PO 401 codes.
You can't clean an EGR valve?
You can, some of them, but the valve itself is not the issue. Most of the time, it's the actual passages that go from the EGR valve into the intake. They get clogged up with thread. The EGR valve itself doesn't usually get clogged up on ones I've seen. Well, no 4.6 ever had a distributor. It didn't. And that was a good thing, because distributors and carburetors needed to be gone a long time before they were. But the early spark plug wires Ford used on this platform were some old hard plastic ones that would punch through. And we would have to replace a lot of plug wires on there. Made good money replacing the wires. And remember what I told you on the 4.6, if you got one with plug wires, you know, they got a coil pack at the front of each head. You get your wires, you sort them out, you put the longest ones and the shortest ones on the passenger side, and the rest of them go on the other side. 1 and 3 go to the passenger side coil pack, and they're marked there where you can know how to go, and 2 and 4 go to the other one. Okay, 5 and 6 go to the, you know, are the ones that go all the way from the driver's side to the passenger side coil pack, and then 7 and 8 go over on the other side. I could draw a picture of that, but what's the point? Spark plug wires are going away too. In '98, the 4.6 lost its plug wires. Okay, so on this one, the driver reported she heard a humming noise after switching the key to the off position. She called me and says, "I'm hearing a noise." He meant to turn off the key. But she says, when I turn the key back on, the humming noise goes away. Usually you expect it to be the other way around, wouldn't it? You know that. So I says, was the humming noise coming from the rear? Because you're thinking fuel pump. You know what I mean? And all that. So I says, I figured the fuel pump relay contacts might be intermittently sticking, because sometimes I've seen that. Wendy's Expedition, that remember what year model it was. She pulled in up there one day to go in a parking place on that thing, and she said it suddenly died. And I went up there, and her fuel pump relay had gone bad on the fly. Just, you know. And I went out there checking, and she didn't know fuel pump operation or anything like that. It turned out the relay was all wrong with it, and it died. Usually a relay will die while it's energized and not while it's been, you know, running. I mean, anything can happen, but I don't even know what it is. So she says it was coming from the front, but it stopped when I switched the key on and then off again. So that shot the fuel pump theory in the foot. I hadn't even heard it, but you know, one of them things. Now, it needed an oil change anyway, so I put it on the lift and made it happen. You know, it's one of our cars that we maintain around here, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. And the first thing I noticed was a noise coming from the engine compartment. It wasn't even didn't even remotely resemble a hum. There was no hum there. It was a distinct cyclic clicking at the rate of about 2 hertz, And the clicking was as regular as clockwork and only happened with the key off. And the key on and quit. Could be a computer glitch, what with the clocks and stuff that, you know, that's in the PCM. There's all kinds of stuff that can go on in the PCM. And I've seen strange things that happened before. One day, I saw this high beam indicator that was flashing off and on. And the guy from the new car department came over and he goes, I got this high beam indicator on this Aerostar. When I turn the high beam lights on, after just a second or two, it starts blinking off and on like a turn signal. It's off and on, off and on. And I said, well, I don't know, you know, what to tell you about that. You know, I have to see that. So anyway, I tried to give him a few. His name was Terry Parker, you know, the old robust guy, you know, like he should have been playing football. You know? But anyway, he was over there and he said, what was funny about him was one day he was having trouble fixing the door latch. This is a funny story about Terry Parker. Great big guy. I mean, golly, his arms were like this big around, you know. And because his arms and hands were so big, he was having trouble getting them up in the door to put this door latch in. And so this, you know, stocky little guy that owned the truck was out there talking to the service writer and says, you know, maybe if I went out there and I kicked this guy's butt, maybe he'd get my truck fixed quicker. And he says, well, he's working in that first stall, let's go out there and talk to him. And I was watching this from the side, and I watched him walk over there where Terry was working, and I saw Terry look up at him, and he stood there for a minute, and then he went back out the right up here. And I walked over and says, Terry, what did he say? He says, I don't know what that guy wanted. He walked up here, was looking at me, and when I looked at him, he goes, hey, how you doing? He was intimidated after. That was funny to me, you know. He didn't anticipate him being big as he was. That was so funny. All right, so he had this flashing high beam indicator. It would flash off and on with the regularity of a turn signal indicator, but the turn signals weren't on. And so basically on that one there, it doesn't have anything mysterious. You remember I told you about this, the Grand Cherokee I had. It was like a 99 or a 2000 model that I drew a ticket on that had a high beam indicator that was flashing a binary code, and it turned out it was coming out of the body computer, you know. But this particular one wasn't hooked to, well, it was hooked to something on some of these vehicles, but this one wasn't equipped. I'll show you what that was in a second. Here we go. They got a daytime running lamp module. And what that module did in those days was whenever you cranked the car up, it would put a reduced amount of current out to the lights to make them burn not quite so bright. And it actually was hooked up to the high beam indicator on the ones that were equipped with it, but this one was not equipped with it. And so it wasn't equipped with DRL, so that electronic box could not be flashing that light. So what are you going to do next? Somebody give me an idea. You got to figure out what's wrong with this quickly as possible. See, the high beam indicator on this one wasn't even connected to any electronic box. If it had been, we'd suspect this, but it wasn't connected to that because that was just jumpered out on that.
Doesn't that, the thing that goes around, doesn't it mean it's going to different places?
What's this?
Is that not the,
That, you talking about this?
no, go up, down, up a little
The
bit.
dotted line.
Yeah, that, no.
That's a connector. And this one, it's dotted line right here.
No, underneath this, solid state, yeah, that dotted line that goes left or right.
Oh, that actually means it's in the same connector as that wire. They're all going through the same connector, is what that means.
Okay, well, we'll see.
Yeah, see, this is the, you're looking at the entire daytime running lamp module. It's not any bigger than that. But anyway, like I say, it's not even in there. There's just a jumper on that one way or another. This is what I saw. The new car guy was out of ideas, so I went over and did the hands-on thing. And you see, you remember these bulbs? You've seen them, the ones that go in there, they twist and turn and lock in like we got on the back of these, so many of these clusters. Now, your newer computerized clusters don't have that. Anyway, so I pressed on this, the one for the high beam indicator, I just put my finger on it and pushed on it, and it stopped flashing. Okay, so what that told me was, these little ears that make contact with those two things weren't quite touching enough, and we basically had a little cyclical, resistance built in there. It may have even been causing the little, the tension to, as the thing heated up, and it was happening kind of fast in and out. I don't think you could make that do that. It was just one of those things that was a tolerance stack up and fell in place like that. And so all I basically did was took this out of there, and I bent those little ears where they were a little tighter, and when I put it back in, it never flashed again. So basically we were trying to make it harder than it was, Well, on the Crown Vic, I could hear two of the relays clicking off and on. Click, 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 click. I mean, just real weird. And one of the clickers was the heat power relay, and the other one was the fuel pump relay. You've seen that little block of relays there before that's over there close to the master cylinder. And so, now, even just for the sake of argument, I hooked up the dadgum breakout box and hooked the lab scope up to it, you know, to see what we see here. This is the pattern I got right here. Isn't that cute? You know, just click, 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 click on all that. And so I didn't want to disturb things too much. Now, one of the things you gotta watch out for when you're working on some kind of an end problem, if you jack around with it too much, it'll go away. Then you don't know what to do, and you know the son of a gun's coming back. So you gotta be careful how much you disturb, you know. And that's the way that I think on situations like this, because I don't want it to go away. I want it to do it. And that's what the deal is on that. So I had seen bad PCMs do crazy things like this. You might even remember this story I told you about that pickup right there. As a matter of fact, that's the same pickup that my uncle sold my son Luke. When the first guy that before him owned it, it was acting up out there, and that was an article I wrote about it in Motor Age. But anyway, I was basically had pulled the engine controller off of that one when I finally figured out there weren't any bad grounds or anything, and took it and put it on another truck. It was a good truck, and that truck started acting the same way, so I knew the engine controller was a common denominator, right? Then we got a $100 engine controller from the parts store and fixed that one, and it's still on it. Well, I checked the battery ground connection at the engine block and the PCM ground on the fender near the master cylinder, but everything was fine. I didn't see any issues there. It was time to peek into parameters. I had to use windows for good. And there's a little ground right there. That's one of the grounds right there by that. It, you know, has to do with all of that. I didn't see nothing wrong with that. I mean, nobody's been working on this thing but me anyway. You know, at that particular time, we weren't doing regular vehicle inspections like we're doing now, but I would get this car, pull it in, change oil, and service it. Since it had 67,000 miles on it, I'm the only one that had worked on it. The new generation Star Tester, I plugged it in, got the diagnostic trouble code, checked the clicking always stopped with the key switched on. I found a 1288 trouble code, P1288. Told me the cylinder head temperature sensor had at some point recorded a reading that was too hot. That's interesting, isn't it? All right, so that was my first real clue as to what was going on, but I didn't realize it until later on. I didn't pick up on it until closer to the end. Sometimes these little clues that come to you don't come clear until you find out that, you know, Colonel Mustard killed somebody with a candlestick in the observatory. You know what I'm saying? I mean, whenever, oh, that's why all of this is going on, you know. You guys ever played Clue? You didn't play Clue? Okay. All right. So I wound up looking at, I didn't see anything wrong with the cylinder head temperature sensor at that point in time. The memory code was a necessary rabbit trail, and I should have done a key on engine off test. But I got sidetracked and decided to check the coolant. When I checked the coolant, it was almost a gallon low. That was another clue. Wasn't any leaks on the ground, nothing in the oil. You know, you might think head gasket, but really? Seriously? I mean, the thing, no, you know, so maybe it was, what was it? You know, the plastic intake likes to leak on those cars, but that one wasn't leaking. Here I am looking at this situation too. So I added about a gallon of coolant and made a note that I needed to keep track of the coolant level over the next few days if I could get the driver to bring it by and let it sit long enough for me to pop the hood. So I ran it for a little while, monitored the cylinder head temperature on the NGS, didn't see any alarming numbers. Didn't see any issues. Didn't see no compression in the coolant. Switched the key off. Doggone it, it was ticking again. Tick, 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 tick. I'm trying to get, you know, past this nonsense. I found myself gathering data too fast and with too little time to sort it out. I didn't sort the data out. Wasn't thinking clearly. I pulled another PCM I had on hand to find out the clicking was still there. I had another one fitted. It clicked with another PCM too. Well, I didn't PCM, you know. Now, if you don't have a good one on hand, you're in a mess, right? So, wasn't a good feeling either when I said, I'm going to get this thing figured out one way or another. Ever getting to working on one where it gets personal? It's me and you, buddy. It's me and you, you know. You are going to lose one way or another. I'm going to take you down. Right. Right. All right, so I looked at my scope reading, the pins that I took the reading, I realized pins 71 and 97 were showing some really unusual voltage activity that would explain the voltage activity on all the other pins. So the answer was getting a little closer. Now you might notice right here, heat power goes into that PCM on 71 and 97, and these are the grounds. Now some of them have got more grounds than this. Some of them will have that one, and that one all ground. If this one doesn't, it's just got those 4 grounds, and it's got a ground over here. And so it's always useful if you pull it up and you put something like this in paint and you look at your data and you paint the ones green that are grounded and the ones red that are powered, you can untangle some hopscotch like that sometimes. So I homed in on the problem. I moved into the underhood fuse panel, Ford calls the power distribution box. I started pulling fuses so the clicking stopped. Finally found something here. Pull fuse till the clicking stopped. And while I was in that general area, I also smelled something burning. What the heck is this? You know? All right, so see that power distribution center, that high current relay center over there? That one there drives the fan, and this is the starter relay, right? About 8 inches behind this PDC, the high current relay center. And there was a cover on the box initially. I've got that relay center around here somewhere. This is what I found. See that cooked relay? And when I pull the cover off, it looked like that. You see how big those terminals are on that relay right there? These are some heavy duty terminals because they know it's going to take some juice to run that fan. Now there was nothing wrong with the fan. It wasn't pulling too many amps. But that relay had died and the current that was trying to flow through those terminals had melted things. But now here's where the clicking came from. See this right here? We got a short in power right here. Alright, so the short was back feeding power to the EEP circuit. That would energize the PCM, that would turn on the fuel pump. The fuel pump was pulling enough current that it would pull the power feed from the short. In other words, it would pull that voltage down because this wasn't a good connection, but it was good enough to wake up the PCM. And the PCM would open his eyes and say, oh, it's time to run the fuel pump for 2 seconds. And the fuel pump would come on, and that would drain the voltage away, and the PCM would go back to sleep. Then it would wake up again, then it would go back to sleep. It was just waking up and going back to sleep, waking up and going back to sleep. You know how sometimes, like Zane was building a circuit for me out there with a live wire, and he managed to loop the relay around, and it was causing it to go bzzz, the relay was buzzing back and forth like a buzzer, I've seen that on these boards in here where somebody would go, it's acting like a buzzer. But anyway, that's where the short was taking place, and this is the fuse I pulled. See, when I pull that fuse, the power that was going in there stops back feeding here. And there, So this is a Keone. The battery was powering this up good and strong, right? See where I got the red wires? All these wires. Now the low coolant fan relay is actually in the power distribution center. The high current relay is out here in that, so it's in 2 different places. All right, so this is what it looked like when I turned off the key. All right, you see? Key on, key off. See how the power source was changing? It was coming through there. See, this power source right here was still there at the time, but it was being overridden by this one when the key was on. So when the key was on, the PCM power relay was doing that. But that back feed was what was causing those issues. See that it was back feeding through here, and it was also feeding that, and it was also going to the PCM and all that. And basically I redrew that so you could see that the other schematic that they had in the book didn't have this. This is accurate, but it wasn't on the schematic where they just had the fan. So I actually modified the schematic to show you what was going on there. And now you can actually see that. See that? See how I had to change the schematic to suit myself? I even enlarged the PCM and put pin 71 in there and all that. All right. So the CHT code and low coolant were both related to the burned out relay. Got it? Wasn't running the fan, sitting in traffic. Engine starts to heat up a little bit, starts percolating the water, and it will push it out. They've got it designed so that it's not going to bust the hoses and waste everything. It's just going to push the pressure out that it can't handle, and it'll spill out onto the road. And that's basically what had happened. It had got, it doesn't surprise me. All right, so, but anyway, I got an entire high current relay center, relays and all, from the salvage yard. Matter of fact, I called, what I originally did, that's whenever that we had that police car. Okay, so I took the one off the police car that we were using for a trainer, and I wired it on there, heat shrink, solder, the relays and everything, and then I had him bring me another one for the police car from the salvage yard. And he just gave it to me, the guy that, Johnny over there, he brought it over there and put it in the seat. And I had one of the students wire that one back in the police car, but the simple fact was, that high current relay center, had, the entire thing had to be replaced because it was all, the socket was all burned and all that kind of thing. And I kinda hate that kind of thing, if you've got an instrument panel that's, a fuse panel that's got burned sockets and all, that's not pleasant. Okay, so what did you pick up on? What'd you learn? What'd you get? Somebody tell me something.
You don't need to try to collect too much data without being able to sort it out.
Yeah. One of the things that gets you under the gun, connecting data is just fine, but you need to write it down so you can think your way through it like a detective. Now, what I was doing was I was kind of under the gun because I was trying to get it done quickly. And when you're under the gun trying to get it done quickly, now I don't mean you need to drag it out all day, but if somebody is telling you, I've got to have this thing, sometimes when we get in our biggest trouble, it's whenever we have to rush and hurry and get through with it by 4 o'clock and it's 3:15 when we start working on it, you know. Now you can really get in hot water like that. And I've told a lot of people, whenever you're doing a big intrusive job on one, like what he's doing on that Suburban, you don't tighten the last bolt and head for the beach. You know what I mean? You better be driving that thing around to make sure it's okay, because you don't want to get down the road a ways and have it sitting beside the highway with you. And but anyway, I got a really good engine performance story to tell you guys tomorrow, you know, where we got a great big surprise. And so be ready for that one, you know. Don't miss tomorrow, because tomorrow's a good story, okay? And if I choose not to post it on YouTube, you'll just miss it entirely, you know. Now, would you guys advise Zane to watch yesterday's presentation?
Yes. Good.
Was that a good one, wasn't it? You like that? Really enjoyed it.
That's probably the best part to do that.
Yeah. So, anyway, don't miss that one.